Hashtag the house that remembered. What would you do if, after your grandmother died, the furniture in her house began moving on its own, not randomly, not chaotically, but rearranging itself, piece by piece, to match photographs from decades before you were even born? And what would you do if, after 14 months of documenting this impossibility for thousands of strangers on the internet, you walked into a room and found something waiting for you that no one, not a single person who saw the final photograph, has ever been able to explain? This is the story of a French forum user known only as Maison_Serin, and the thread that, over 20 years later, still hasn't been solved. Before we go any further, I need to establish something. This is not a creepypasta. This is not an ARG that someone reverse-engineered for entertainment. What I'm about to walk you through was a real-time, 14-month documentation posted across nearly 700 individual entries on a French-language paranormal forum called Les Veilleurs, The Watchers. The forum existed from 1998 to 2007. It has since been taken offline, but substantial archives persist on the Wayback Machine, on personal mirrors maintained by obsessive followers, and in a 240-page PDF that a French university student compiled in 2009 as part of a thesis on digital folklore. I've read the thesis. I've cross-referenced the archives. I've spoken, through intermediaries, to two of the original forum moderators. What I'm about to tell you is as close to the documented record as I can reconstruct. And the documented record is deeply, fundamentally unsettling. Let's start at the beginning. On March 7, 2002, a user registered on Les Veilleurs under the handle Maison_Serin. The name itself is worth noting. Maison is the French word for house. Serin doesn't correspond to a common French word. Some have speculated it's a truncation of serenite, serenity. Others have pointed out that Serin is a Welsh word meaning star. The user never explained the name. They never explained much of anything about themselves personally. What we know, pieced together from contextual clues across 14 months of posts, amounts to this: Maison_Serin was likely female, likely in her late 20s or early 30s, likely living in a rural area of Brittany in northwestern France. And in February of 2002, her maternal grandmother had died. The grandmother, never named in the thread, referred to only as Mamie, had lived alone in a stone farmhouse for the last 11 years of her life, following the death of her husband. Maison_Serin described the house as old, possibly dating to the late 1800s, with thick granite walls, low ceilings, and small windows that let in very little light. The kind of house that holds cold in its bones. She had inherited it. No other family members wanted it. And in the weeks following her grandmother's funeral, she had begun the process of cleaning it out, sorting through possessions, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to discard. Her first post was short. Tentative. Almost apologetic. Translated from the French, it read approximately: I don't know if this is the right place to post this. I've never believed in the paranormal. I still don't think I do. But something is happening in my grandmother's house and I can't explain it, and I need to tell someone because I think I might be losing my mind. 3 days ago, I moved the kitchen table against the wall so I could sweep the floor. Yesterday, when I came back, it was in the center of the room again. I assumed the floor was uneven and it had slid. But the chairs were arranged around it. All 4 of them. Pulled out, evenly spaced, as if someone was about to sit down for dinner. The responses were what you'd expect. Skepticism. Gentle suggestions about grief and stress. A few users offered practical explanations: settlement in the old floors, a neighbor with a key, her own memory playing tricks. Maison_Serin accepted these possibilities. She even seemed relieved. She posted again 2 days later saying she had checked the locks, confirmed no one else had a key, and felt foolish for overreacting. Then, on March 14, everything changed. She posted a photograph. The image quality was poor, this was 2002, and she appeared to be using an early consumer digital camera, possibly a first-generation device with resolution barely adequate for web display. The photo showed a kitchen. Stone walls. A wooden table in the center with 4 chairs arranged around it. On the table sat a ceramic vase with dried flowers. Beneath the photo, she wrote, "I did not put flowers on the table. I have not purchased flowers. These were in a box in the cellar. I found the box open this morning. I don't understand." Then she posted a second photograph. This one was older, a physical print that she had scanned. It showed the same kitchen, but the image was clearly from another era. The light was different. The curtains were different. But the table was in the same position. The chairs were arranged identically. And on the table sat a ceramic vase with dried flowers. She wrote, "I found this photograph in an album in the bedroom. It is dated 1974. I was not born until 1973 or 1974. She didn't state the obvious. She didn't have to. The forum did it for her." The kitchen had rearranged itself to match a photograph from nearly 30 years earlier. Now, at this point, it would be easy to dismiss this. And many people did. The thread received its first wave of accusations: staged, hoaxed, attention-seeking. But Maison_Saren did something that, in retrospect, demonstrated either remarkable foresight or genuine desperation for credibility. She began documenting obsessively. She started taking photographs of every room in the house each time she visited, dating them meticulously, and uploading them in batches. She visited the house approximately 3 to 4 times per week. She was not living there, she had her own residence elsewhere, though she never specified where, and each visit lasted several hours. Over the next 8 weeks, she documented 5 more incidents. 5 things that nobody on that forum could explain. The first, a heavy oak armoire in the upstairs bedroom moved from the north wall to the east wall. This was a piece of furniture that, by Maison_Saren's estimate, weighed over 200 kilograms. She could not move it alone. She had not asked anyone to move it. She found a photograph from 1961 showing the armoire against the east wall. The second, curtains in the sitting room changed. Not the curtains themselves, the same fabric remained, but the way they were tied back. Maison_Saren had left them drawn closed. She returned to find them gathered and tied with a specific knot, held by small hooks she hadn't noticed before. A photograph from 1968 showed the curtains tied in exactly the same fashion. The third, books on a shelf in the hallway rearranged themselves. Maison_Saren had stacked them horizontally for transport. She returned to find them standing upright, organized by size, with 3 specific titles, which she named, placed at the center of the middle shelf. A photograph from 1979 showed this exact arrangement. One of the books was visible enough in the old photograph for forum users to confirm the spine matched. The fourth, a rug appeared. A rug that Maison_Saren had rolled up and placed in the cellar reappeared in the sitting room, positioned in front of the fireplace. A photograph from 1982 showed the rug in that precise location, with the same orientation, a distinctive pattern of concentric diamonds providing clear visual confirmation. The fifth, this is the one that made the thread go viral within the French-language internet. Maison_Saren arrived at the house to find the dining room table, a different table than the kitchen one, set for dinner. Plates, glasses, silverware, folded napkins. Set for 6. She counted 6 place settings. She photographed them. Then she found, in the album, a photograph from Christmas 1966, showing the same table set for dinner. Set for 6. With the plates and glasses in corresponding positions. Maison_Saren wrote, beneath the photographs, I counted the silverware. There are 6 forks, 6 knives, 6 spoons. My grandmother and grandfather had 4 children. With the 2 of them, that makes 6. In 1966, all 4 children were still living at home. I have verified this with my mother. This is how the table was set for Christmas dinner that year. My mother remembered. She was 9 years old. Let me reiterate what's being claimed here. The house was rearranging itself to match specific moments in its own past. Not random configurations. Not vague similarities. Specific, photographically documented moments spanning decades. And the house appeared to be moving backward through time. Forum moderators took notice. By late April 2002, the thread had been pinned. By May, it was the most active thread on Les Veilleurs. Users were divided into roughly 4 camps. The first camp believed Maison_Sarin was perpetrating an elaborate hoax. The second believed she was experiencing genuine paranormal activity. The third believed she was suffering from a psychological break related to grief, possibly manipulating the house herself without conscious awareness, a kind of dissociative fugue state expressed through physical arrangement. The fourth camp, smaller, but vocal, believed the house itself had some kind of memory. That the stones, the wood, the space itself, had absorbed the patterns of life lived within it and was, in the absence of its longtime inhabitant, replaying those patterns like a recording. This fourth theory became known in French paranormal circles as la mémoire de Murs. The memory of the walls. Maison_Sarin engaged with all 4 theories. She was not defensive. She did not argue with skeptics. She did not perform certainty. She expressed confusion, fear, and a strange, creeping sadness that became more pronounced as the months wore on. In one post from June 2002, she wrote, "I sit in the kitchen sometimes and I feel like the house is trying to tell me something. Not words. Not a message. More like, it misses her. It misses the way things were. And it's trying to go back." By the summer of 2002, the thread had attracted enough attention that a journalist from a small regional newspaper contacted the forum administrators asking to interview Maison_Sarin. She declined. A paranormal investigation group based in Rennes offered to visit the house with equipment. She declined that too. Her reasoning, posted publicly, was stark: if I let people in, it might stop. And I don't know if I want it to stop yet. That sentence haunted the forum. Through the fall and winter of 2002, the incidents continued. Maison_Sarin documented 23 more instances of the house rearranging itself to match historical photographs. The progression was consistent. The house was moving backward in time. The photographs it seemed to be replicating grew older and older. By September, it was matching images from the late 1950s. By November, the 1940s. By January 2003, it was replicating arrangements from what appeared to be the late 1930s. And here is where the story takes its first genuinely dark turn. The photographs from the 1930s and 1940s were different. The earlier images, the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, showed a home. A lived-in, warm, human space. But the older photographs revealed something else. The house in the 1930s was sparse. The furniture was minimal. The rooms felt empty, austere, almost institutional. Maison_Sarin noted this shift. She wrote, "The house is becoming less like a home. The older it gets, the colder it feels. The photos from this era, there are fewer of them, and they are darker. I don't know who lived here before my grandparents. I don't know what this house was." She began researching the history of the property. What she found was fragmentary but disturbing. The house had been in her family since the early 1940s, when her grandparents purchased it for a very low price. Before that, its ownership was unclear. Local records suggested it had been used at various points as a farmworker's dwelling, a storage facility, and, during one period in the late 1930s, as temporary housing managed by local authorities. For whom, the records did not specify. Several forum users with knowledge of French history pointed out that rural Brittany in the late 1930s saw an influx of refugees, first from the Spanish Civil War, then from Eastern Europe. Others noted, more quietly, that during the occupation, rural properties in Brittany were sometimes used for purposes that went deliberately unrecorded. Maison_Saren did not pursue this line of inquiry publicly. She acknowledged the suggestions, said she would look into it, and then posted nothing for 11 days. When she returned, she was different. Her tone was flatter. Her posts were shorter. She wrote, "The house is matching photographs I don't have." This single sentence might be the most frightening thing in the entire thread. Let me explain what she meant. Up until this point, every rearrangement had corresponded to a physical photograph in the albums kept at the house. She could find the matching image. She could compare. But now, the house was arranging itself in configurations she couldn't verify, because the photographs, if they ever existed, were either lost, destroyed, or from a period before anyone in her family lived there. The house was remembering things no one alive could confirm. 3 forum users, 3 separate, unconnected individuals, said the same thing in response to this revelation. They each said, in their own words, "You need to leave that house." Maison_Saren didn't leave. Through the spring of 2003, the thread entered what longtime followers call the dark period. Maison_Saren's posts became less frequent, sometimes a week or more between updates, and markedly more disturbing. She described arriving at the house to find it in configurations that felt alien. Furniture pushed against walls in ways that didn't make ergonomic sense. Chairs facing corners. The table moved to a position directly in front of the door, as if to block entry. She described a smell she couldn't identify, not decay, not mold, something else. Something organic but unfamiliar. She described finding marks on the walls that she initially took for water stains but, upon closer examination, appeared to be scratches. Faint. Old. But present. She photographed everything. And the photographs from this period are, to this day, the most analyzed images from the thread. They show a house that looks, and I use this word carefully, wrong. Not in any single dramatic way. Not with any obvious supernatural element. Just, wrong. The angles feel off. The shadows don't sit where you expect them. The rooms seem both smaller and emptier than they should. Several forum users, including 2 who claimed professional experience in photography, noted that the lighting in these images was inconsistent in ways they couldn't attribute to the camera or to natural light conditions. One wrote, "It looks like the light is coming from inside the walls." In April 2003, Maison_Saren posted something that shifted the entire framework of the discussion. She had been going through a box of her grandmother's personal papers, letters, receipts, administrative documents, and found a notebook. Small. Leather-bound. Filled with her grandmother's handwriting. Most of it was mundane, shopping lists, appointments, reminders. But in the back of the notebook, in handwriting that was shakier, less controlled, possibly written in old age or under stress, were a series of entries that Maison_Saren transcribed for the forum. The entries were undated. They read, in translation. "It moved again last night. The chair by the window. I put it back. The table. Always the table. It wants to be in the center. Found the blue vase on the mantel. I packed it away in 1985. I don't know how. It's getting worse. The bedroom. The armoire moved. I can't move it alone. Jean has been dead for 4 years. I think the house remembers better than I do." And then, the final entry. "I am afraid to die in this house. Not because of death. Because I don't know what the house will do when I'm gone." Maison_Saren posted these transcriptions without commentary. The forum erupted. The implications were staggering. If the notebook was genuine, and no one ever proved it wasn't, then the phenomenon Maison_Saren was documenting wasn't new. It had been happening for years. Possibly decades. The grandmother had known. She had been quietly, privately dealing with a house that rearranged itself around her, and she had never told anyone. Or had she? Maison_Saren asked her mother about it. Her mother's response, as relayed on the forum, was guarded. Your grandmother said things sometimes about the house having moods. We thought she was being poetic. She was old. She lived alone. You hear things when you're alone. But then her mother added something that Maison_Saren almost didn't include in the post. She did ask me once, maybe 2 years before she died, if I ever felt like the house was trying to show me something. I said no. She looked relieved. And then she looked terrified. The thread had now been running for over a year. It had thousands of followers, many of whom checked daily for updates. There were spin-off threads analyzing the photographs, debating the theories, attempting to identify the house's location, researching the history of the region. A small community had formed around this mystery. And at the center of it, Maison_Saren was becoming less and less present. Her posts grew more sparse. When she did post, she sounded exhausted. Resigned. In one of her last substantial entries, from June 2003, she wrote, I've been thinking about what the house is doing. Everyone keeps asking if it's a ghost. If it's my grandmother. If it's something in the walls or the ground or the stones. I don't think it's any of those things. I think the house is a house. I think it's doing what houses do. We just don't usually see it because we're in the way. We fill rooms with our living and the house goes along with it because what choice does it have? But when we leave, when we finally leave, the house does what it's been wanting to do all along. It goes back. It sorts through its own memories. It puts things where they were. It tries to find the configuration that felt most like home. And it keeps going back and back and back, looking for something. I don't know what it's looking for. I don't think it knows either. This post received over 300 responses. It remains one of the most quoted passages in French paranormal forum history. But it was what came next, the final act of this story, that cemented the thread as something that still defies explanation over 2 decades later. On July 19, 2003, Maison_Saren posted for the last time. The post was brief. It contained no text beyond a date stamp and a single photograph. The photograph showed a room. Based on previous images, forum users identified it as the ground floor sitting room, the one with the fireplace, the one where the rug had reappeared. But the room didn't look like any of the previous photographs. Not any of the old photographs, and not any of Maison_Saren's documented images. The room was empty. Completely empty. No furniture. No rug. No curtains. No decorations. Bare stone walls. Bare floor. The fireplace was visible, but it looked different, older, less finished, as if the mantel had been removed or had never been installed. The window was visible, but it appeared to have no glass, just an opening in the stone, with gray light coming through. The room looked like it had never been lived in. Like it had never been a home at all. Like it had gone all the way back, past every photograph, past every configuration, past every memory, to the beginning. To the raw, empty, original state of the house before anyone had ever placed a piece of furniture inside it. Before anyone had ever called it home. But that's not what the forum debates. What the forum debates, what people have been debating for 20 years, is what's in the corner of the photograph. In the far left corner of the room, just at the edge of the frame, there is something on the floor. The image quality is poor. The lighting is dim. The resolution collapses at the margins. But there is something there. A shape. A form. Some people see a bundle of cloth. Some see a piece of furniture collapsed on its side. Some see a trick of light and shadow, a compression artifact, nothing at all. And some people see a figure. Small. Hunched. Curled up in the corner of an empty room in an empty house that has, over the course of 14 months, methodically disassembled itself back through 50 years of memories until there was nothing left. The figure, if it is a figure, is not looking at the camera. It appears to be facing the wall. Its proportions are wrong, somehow. Too compact. Too still. Like a person who has been sitting in that position for a very, very long time. Or like a person who was always there. In every photograph. In every configuration. Behind the furniture. Behind the curtains. Behind the memory of the walls. Waiting to be seen. Maison_Sarin never posted again. Her account was never deleted. It simply went dormant. The forum administrators, after 3 months of silence, sent private messages. No response. After 6 months, they posted publicly in the thread asking if anyone had contact with her. No one did. After a year, the thread was locked with a moderator's note that read, "This thread is preserved as a record. We hope Maison_Sarin is well." The house was never identified. No subsequent reports matched the description. No one in the French paranormal community was ever able to confirm or debunk the claims to a satisfactory degree. The photographs exist. The thread exists. The notebook entries exist, insofar as Maison_Sarin's transcriptions exist. But Maison_Sarin herself, whoever she was, is gone. There are theories, of course. There are always theories. The hoax theory remains the most popular among skeptics. A creative individual with access to an old house, some vintage photographs, and a gift for atmospheric writing could, in principle, have constructed the entire narrative. The 14-month timeline is unusual for a hoax. Most internet fabrications burn bright and fast, but not unprecedented. The emotional arc, the escalation, the final photograph, all could be the work of a skilled storyteller. But there are problems with the hoax theory. The forum moderators, and I spoke with 2 of them, confirmed that Maison_Sarin's IP address remained consistent throughout the thread, originating from a Brittany region ISP. The metadata on the photographs, where recoverable, was consistent with the claimed timeline. The older photographs, the ones from the 1960s and 1970s, showed signs of genuine age, paper stock, printing techniques, and color degradation consistent with the claimed decades. One of the moderators said, simply, "If it was a hoax, it was the most meticulous hoax I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot." The grief theory, that Maison_Sarin was rearranging the house herself, unconsciously, in a dissociative state brought on by the loss of her grandmother, is psychologically plausible but physically problematic. Several of the documented movements involved furniture that a single person could not reasonably move alone. The armoire weighing over 200 kilograms is the most obvious example. And the arrangement of objects to match specific photographs with such precision suggests either deliberate effort or something else entirely. The mémoire de murs theory, the memory of the walls, has no scientific basis. There is no known mechanism by which a physical structure could absorb, store, and replay the spatial configurations of its contents. And yet, the thread itself became one of the most cited pieces of evidence in French-language discussions of what might be called place memory or residual haunting. The idea that spaces retain something of what happens within them is ancient, cross-cultural, and persistent. The stone tape theory, first popularized in English-language paranormal discourse, posits essentially the same thing, that the mineral content of building materials might function as a recording medium for emotional or psychic energy. It's pseudoscience. It has never been demonstrated. But it resonates. It resonates because we all know what it feels like to walk into a room and sense that something happened there. We all know what it feels like to return to a childhood home and feel the weight of accumulated time. And then there is the theory that almost no one discusses, because it's the one that disturbs people the most. The theory that the house wasn't remembering. It was forgetting. That what Maison_Sarin documented was not a house replaying its memories but a house losing them. Shedding them. Stripping away layer after layer of human habitation, of warmth, of life, the way a body might reject a transplant. Going back and back and back until there was nothing left but stone and air and whatever was there before anyone arrived. Whatever was in the corner. After the thread was locked, the discussion continued elsewhere, on other forums, on early social media platforms, eventually on Reddit and various paranormal communities. Over the years, a handful of significant developments occurred that are worth documenting. In 2006, a user on a different French forum claimed to have identified the house based on architectural details visible in Maison_Seren's photographs. They posted coordinates corresponding to a rural property outside a small village in Côtes d'Armor, in northern Brittany. Another user drove to the location and found a stone farmhouse matching the general description. They took photographs from the exterior. The resemblance to Maison_Seren's images was compelling but not conclusive. They did not attempt to enter. The property appeared occupied, there were curtains in the windows and a car in the adjacent lane. They left without making contact. In 2009, the university thesis I mentioned earlier, written by a student at the University of Rennes, provided the most comprehensive analysis of the thread to date. The thesis treated the material as a case study in digital folklore, examining how the narrative structure of Maison_Seren's posts mirrored traditional ghost story conventions while also diverging from them in significant ways. The author noted that unlike most ghost stories, the thread lacked a defined antagonist. There was no malevolent spirit, no curse, no identifiable cause. The house simply did what it did. The author described this as ambient dread, horror derived not from threat but from the violation of assumed norms. Furniture stays where you put it. Rooms remain as you leave them. When they don't, the implications are not dramatic but existential. If a house has memory, if a space has volition, then our most basic assumptions about the nature of physical reality are wrong. In 2014, a digital forensics hobbyist performed an extensive analysis of the surviving photographs from the thread. Their findings, published on a personal blog, were inconclusive but interesting. They found no evidence of digital manipulation in Maison_Seren's photographs. The images appeared to be unaltered originals from the claimed camera type. The scanned photographs, the historical ones, showed compression artifacts consistent with early 2000s scanning hardware. The analyst was unable to confirm or deny the authenticity of the images but stated, if these were fabricated, they were fabricated with the hardware and software available in 2002, and they were fabricated with an unusual degree of technical consistency. And in 2018, something happened that briefly reignited the entire discussion. A user on a French Reddit community dedicated to paranormal experiences posted a short, unelaborated message. The account was new, created the same day. The message, translated, read, "The house is empty again." It took longer this time. The account posted nothing else. It was never verified as connected to Maison_Seren. The username, which I will not share, to respect the possibility of privacy, bore no obvious resemblance to the original handle. But the phrasing. Again. This time. As if it had happened before. As if it was happening again. As if someone was still watching. I want to return to that final photograph. The empty room. The shape in the corner. I've looked at it more times than I care to admit. I've adjusted the brightness, the contrast, the levels. I've zoomed in until the pixels dissolve into meaningless blocks of color. And I'll tell you what I see, though I understand that what I see may be a product of the story I've just told you, the expectations that have been built, the dread that has accumulated over 14 months of posts and 20 years of analysis. I see a figure. Small. Still. Facing the wall. And I see, in the pixelated suggestion of its form, something that might be arms wrapped around its knees. Something that might be a head bowed forward. Something that might be a posture of waiting. Or something that might be nothing at all. A shadow. A stain. A compression artifact from a cheap digital camera in 2002. The human brain finding patterns where none exist, because the human brain cannot tolerate a story without a final image, a face, a figure, an answer. The house that remembered. Or the house that forgot. Or the house that was never really empty, no matter how many times the furniture moved. There's one more detail I haven't mentioned. It's small. It's easy to overlook. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. In the very first photograph Maison_Saren posted, the kitchen, the table, the chairs, the vase with dried flowers, there are 4 chairs arranged around the table. She describes 4 chairs. The photograph from 1974 also shows 4 chairs. But look at the first photograph again. Look at the shadows on the floor. Count the shadows. There are 5. There have always been 5. Someone was sitting at that table. Someone was sitting at that table from the very beginning. And Maison_Saren, in her grief, in her focus on the vase and the flowers and the impossible arrangement of furniture, never counted the shadows. Never noticed the one that didn't belong to a chair. The one at the head of the table. The one that was there in every photograph, every single photograph, if you know where to look. The house wasn't remembering for itself. It was remembering for someone. And in that last photograph, the empty room, stripped of everything, reduced to stone and air and gray light through a glassless window, whatever the house had been remembering for had finally become visible. Because there was nothing left to hide behind. I've shared everything I have. Every verifiable detail, every theory, every unanswered question. And after 20 years, the questions remain. Who was Maison_Saren? What was the house? What happened in its history that left such an imprint? And what is the shape in the corner of the final photograph? The thread is still there, locked, archived, preserved in digital amber. Thousands of posts from thousands of people who watched this story unfold in real time, who debated and theorized and worried, who sent messages into the void and received silence in return. The last moderator's note, "We hope Maison_Saren is well," hangs over the whole thing like an epitaph. But I keep coming back to the grandmother's notebook. That last entry. I am afraid to die in this house. Not because of death. Because I don't know what the house will do when I'm gone. She knew. She knew the house would do this. She spent decades holding it together, keeping things in place, fighting the house's desire to go back. And when she died, there was no one left to hold the line. Until her granddaughter walked in and found a kitchen table in the center of the room, set for a meal no living person had prepared. Some houses are built on land that doesn't want them there. Some houses absorb the lives lived within them until those lives become structural, load-bearing, inseparable from the stone. Some houses remember. And when the last person who remembers them dies, they begin their own process of mourning, slow, physical, room by room, until they've worked their way back to the beginning. And some houses, maybe this house, were never empty to begin with. What do you think really happened? Was Maison_Saren documenting something genuine, or crafting the most elaborate and atmospheric hoax in early internet history? Was the house remembering, or forgetting? And what is the shape in the corner of the final photograph? Leave your theory below. Because 20 years later, no one has solved this. And the house, wherever it is still standing.